So, how many people have New Year's resolutions all set in your head? You got it? You? How many people have a New Year's resolution? 1, 2, 3. So now you have to stand up and tell us what that means. So I wanted to just share a little bit of, I guess it's sort of a New Year's resolution. I've been thinking about it for some time. So some of you know that I decided I had sort of planned to not be teaching this year. Yay, I was very happy about that. I thought I deserved a break after 20 years, so I announced to our board of directors that I was going to take a sabbatical in 2016. And I was very happy about that. So then life actually had other plans. So I had a fairly serious illness, and and it caused a lot of inner changes, a lot of sort of re-evaluating. And so I decided that I wanted to stay here in 2016 and teach at least a one-year course. So we've been announcing that. Some of you know about it and some of you don't. I think I'm going to be coughing, by the way. So this just happened when we're sitting. That's what happens in a sit. It causes all sorts of problems. So anyway, so that goes to sort of the New Year's resolution. That one of the things that became really fascinating to me last summer, after I was languishing and kind of lying around recovering from a stroke, just the idea, the word intimacy, which has never really been that high in my book. I mean, what does it mean? Sex? What does intimacy mean? So intimacy became interesting to me in a way that it hadn't before. And I started sort of thinking about my own life and the patterns of my life. And so this is just a question that I began to ask myself, and I wonder if anybody's ever asked themselves this question. But I was wondering, so like, have I avoided certain levels or aspects of intimacy in my life? It's a very good question, I think, because it's like, well, you have to first of all define what the hell does what is intimacy? But so on that scale, I came up short on the level of intimacy in certain aspects, and so I'm repeating a little bit of like about 4 or 5 different Dharma talks in the past, and so last New Year's Eve we had a lovely sit, and so I gave a talk on the 3 disguises, and I told Sam that's what I was going to talk about today, but I changed my mind. So I will talk about the 3 disguises. Some of you were there, but one of the disguises that the ego, maybe a primary strategy. Well, hello, Robert. When did you get back? It's good to see you. Well, I'm glad you can hear this talk because you need it. No, I'm just kidding. So the ego is morphs, and very you heard me say many times it's by far the biggest player on our stage, and it's most clever. The ego is more clever than any single person. Your ego is smarter than you. I've got news for you. If you think your ego is not smarter than you, we need to have a long talk. My ego is smarter than me. So I said at New Year's Eve that one of the what I realized at a later date in my life, one of the fabulous strategies of mango was speed, S-P-E-E-D. And one of the things that was said about me in New York when I was a yoga teacher and a musician, people would describe me as faster than a speeding bullet. Someone said, you know, he won't die, he'll just disappear in speed. I always thought that was a compliment. I just loved it when people said that. I just thought, that's just nice, I'm so fast. And I've always enjoyed and recognized, and I have fun like talking with people. And some people are so fast, you know, they know what you're going to say before you're finished with it. And sometimes they start, you know, going right on with what you're talking about long before you finish, which is, of course, typical of a very quick mind, speedy mind. Some of you all have in this room very speedy minds. Some of you have slower minds. But a speedy mind can be, of course, a very, very primary way of avoiding intimacy. It's like you're out of the room, right? But no one could catch you because you're gone before. I have a friend who she was a dancer in New York, and she did wonderful one-woman shows. But I remember she was talking about the men she had dated. She said they professionally disappear, but. She said her complaint was that they some part of them would continually disappear in relationship. Well, that would be what I would call an avoidance of intimacy. Avoidance of some level of connection, and I'm not going to be so brave as to get into this too deeply because it probably be a little bit over my head. So I'm thinking about this idea of the avoidance of intimacy as I'm coming here, and so I got on the elevator, and there's this guy who lives in my building. He always says, "God bless you," and then the next thing he does is he starts trying to convert you to Christianity. So I got on the elevator, and he said, "Guess what happened to me?" He said, "I have been so blessed by God." So I can already feel the distance here, right? And he said, "Someone has given me a car." He said, "I've been walking for 2 years, and someone just gave him a Toyota." It was very sweet. He was very excited. But I could feel this way of pulling back. I didn't want, I smiled, I was present, blah, blah, blah. But some part of me was like judging. Just some little part was kind of pulling back. Oh my God, another Christian. But, so I didn't get, so I get into the car, and some of you know that someone rear-ended my car. I used to say I was rear-ended, and then I decided that does not sound right at all. I said that for about a month, right? I was saying, I was rear-ended yesterday, and so I've decided that's not a good thing. Although, as we're talking about intimacy. So anyway, the car was rear-ended. So as some of you know, my trunk, the lid won't close, and so it pops up. So I had to go to a memorial service in L.A. yesterday, and that damn trunk, and I think every time it popped up, I said a bad word. But so anyway, so I get in my car. This sweet man, is very sweet, and I feel myself pulling away a little bit. So I'm driving down the road, and he's so thrilled. So all of a sudden, he pulls right up to the side of it, rolls down his window, and says, "Your trunk is not closed." So I smiled, I said, so anyway, it was fine. But anyway, and then I kind of sped away just as quickly as I could. But of course, he drove as fast as he could to stay up with me, right? Just because he wanted me to see that in his new car. Well, it's not a new car, it's an old car. Not as old as mine, probably. So, but it's interesting to experience that part of me that, this is a fine, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a fine person. But this part that just kind of like, just separated. Was that avoidance of intimacy? Anybody want to say no, Victor? That was not an avoidance of intimacy? There was some level that right there, and it was just so interesting to me that, life, life is it just never stops teaching, and so here I am getting ready to go talking about avoidance of intimacy, and there it is. I thought, damn. So, so my heart softened just a little bit. So speed is, how many people have an issue with monkey mind? Is there anybody who doesn't have an issue with monkey mind? What is that if it's not speed? I mean, when we talk about a monkey, a monkey goes, right? Mm-hmm. A monkey, if you see them at their leisure, they may be, lying down and picking, fleas off of each other. But I mean, if you see them in the woods, they're moving, right, from limb to limb to limb to limb to limb. What is that if it's not a form of speed in the mind? So what's going on, if you think of that as actually a strategy, right? That it's not an accident that your mind or my mind is doing that. It's not like, oh my God, it's like it has a purpose. And so what is that purpose? Why is the mind chattering all the time? Why is it doing that? It's serving some purpose. So my suggestion is that it's probably an avoidance of intimacy on some level. How about intimacy with yourself? That would be perhaps the ultimate. So it is a kind of an amazingly brilliant ruse of the ego. Because we all accept that. Is there anyone who doesn't accept that? Oh, I just talk all the time, right? We say that with some humor, really. Most of us do, right? But we've certainly bought it hook, line, and sinker, I think, right? So we sit in meditation. And I think that meditation is, I think y'all have heard me say this many times before, that the thing that's so wonderful about meditation, it's about the only thing anyone ever figured out as a way to try to start working with this monkey mind. And so what would happen if the mind is not completely covering every moment with a thought? What would happen if there's a gap, if there are gaps between thought, if there are moments of silence? There maybe that would be a moment of intimacy. So, fortunately, that's not what my Dharma talk is about. Now, let's see. So I wanted to read a couple of things. So I want to read something. This is Krishnamurti. He was smart. This is Krishnamurti who says something. This is what he has to say about love. Well, let me set this up first. I wanted to read this, but there was a setup before I was going to read it. So I was talking with someone who was kind of desperately in love and missing the person that he's in love with. and he was sort of talking about, so the person he loves is pretty far away, and he was very, very lonely and very upset. And he was talking about how tremendously he needed her. And kind of mixing that up with the word love. And in our conversation, I said, I'm not so sure that love is a need. That kind of got his attention. He said, I think love is a verb. Maybe it's an activity. It's something that seeks or goes toward the other. But I said, I don't necessarily think that it's a need. And that actually, when I said that, it reminded me of this little thing that Krishnamurti said. So I kind of shared it with him. And then it reminded me of a little song I wrote a long time ago. So Krishnamurti says, love is not sensation. It is a flame without smoke. Maybe need is the smoke. Maybe need is the smoke in love. I think it is. But love is just a flame that burns. You will know love when you as the thinker are not. So now he's implying something. When I was talking about the monkey mind, I wonder if love is not terribly possible in the presence of a monkey mind. What do you think? Nah. I can love you and think a lot, right? But so when he says that, he says you will know love when you, as the thinker, are not. I think that's, again, fairly profound. Plus, love is a flame without smoke. That's not bad either. You cannot sacrifice yourself, the thinker, for love. You can't. We can't get rid of the thinker. There can be no deliberate action for love because love is not of the mind. What do you think about that? Love is not of the mind. The discipline, the will to love, is a thought of love. And a thought of love is sensation. Thought cannot think about love. Thought cannot think. Think about it, right? I've heard many people, clients in the past say, I think I love her. And or, I think I love him. And I would say, what do you mean you think? I said, love is, you know. You don't think, you know. There's no thought to love. Okay. So, Christian Murdy agrees with me. He's a smart man. Thought cannot think about love, for love is beyond the reaches of the mind. Thought is continuous, as the monkey mind is continuous. Does anyone question if the monkey mind is pretty continuous? It doesn't really seem to be very discontinuous, does it? I mean, you go to sleep at night, and then the monkey mind is gone forever, right? And you wake up the next morning and you're enlightened. Did that ever happen to anybody? More than likely not. So he says thought is continuous, which is kind of bad news. And love is inexhaustible. That which is inexhaustible is ever new, and that which is continuous is ever in the fear of ending. Wonder why we're afraid not to think. Wonder why we're afraid, right, to let go of the monkey mind. So I love this, and then the other one that I wanted to read, and I think I'll read that after I finish this extremely interesting talk. I wanted to then share this poem that I wrote with you. I wrote many years ago. But no, it's not a poem, it's a song. I sang it in New York. I never understood why people, at the end, they didn't look happy. I missed so many things in the years when I was a performer. I thought, I was kind of mistaken about the message that I was sharing in my song. So I wrote this song, and it came from sort of the heart of a child that I was and have been. Children come and children grow in such a hurry. I wonder, where are the children we used to be? Where is the world we were so anxious to see? Is this that world we've been waiting for, full of hatred and war, where love is a pretty word for a selfish need, and the children we were grew to be children of greed? Children come and children grow in such a hurry. They never know that all the grown-ups are just children growing cold. Well, that did not make the audience. So I finished the song, and then I truly didn't understand. I thought it was such a pretty song. Well, it was pretty. I mean, the melody was pretty and the piano was pretty, but the words. But the thing that I wanted to share with you all is this, and going back to what Christian Murdy is saying, that love is a flame without smoke, and I said the smoke is the need. So the other part of that was the song that I wrote when I was 30 something. love is a pretty word for a selfish need. So, is it possible to truly love when you are not really needing that person to love you back? Is that possible? Is it possible to truly love, as a flame without smoke, without something needing something back? I don't know. But I do think that this whole thing, and the reason why I love what we're doing, it's like, in a sense, it's like, and even in Krishnamurti, when we're talking about love and we're talking about intimacy and the avoidance of intimacy, it's really kind of the heart of what we're doing here. It's really easy, it's so easy to sort of forget what we're doing. We come and we sit for 45 minutes or for an hour, try to quieten them. But really, it's a very profound thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to see what is. We're trying to see this, and to some extent, this continual avoidance of intimacy and this avoidance of now. So I love what we're doing. I love what you're doing. I love that we're wanting to see what is real. We're aspiring to see what is real. So, I had my birthday. I was like 74 years old. So I had my birthday here, and we had a very lovely birthday. A lot of people came. A lot of you were here. Some of you were here. The ones who were important were here. And so if you all remember, I brought my little Roland piano and did some songs. I didn't do that song, by the way, because I didn't want to depress people. So sitting over there near the wall was this guy, remarkable guy. And Travis had put a little reserve thing on the chair for him and his wife because he was 3 months off of his, or 4 months off of his 90th birthday. And so I had lunch with them about maybe 3 months ago. So he had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he wanted to have lunch with us. And he knew he was dying. And so we had lunch, and we had a wonderful time. And so we were ordering, and so he said, I think I'll have a chili hot dog with French fries. And he looked at me as if to say, why not? It was quite wonderful. And he was an amazing person. I mean, truly, truly amazing. Quite well known. The LA Times was quite full of, the obituaries there were tons of obituaries. But the thing about him that was so amazing to me was I don't think he avoided intimacy at all. I think maybe he may be sort of like the hero for me of non-avoidance of intimacy. And when his first wife died, and he was just very morose, he was deeply in love with her. And then and he met my friend a year later, and so then he had 2 fabulous marriages. And anyways, so it was interesting to me. So we had lunch, and we sat. He was interested in me. He was interested in me, and he was interested in my friend, his wife. He was interested. He wanted us to tell us more about when we were friends in New York, right? And I thought that was so, and this is someone who clearly, he knew he was dying, but he was still interested in the other person, and he was still interested in drawing us out. Tell me a little bit more about that meditation you all do in Long Beach. And he wanted to just talk about, what is the Buddhist idea about death and heaven. It was quite remarkable. So at his memorial service, yesterday. I had not heard this story. One person, I told one person this story. So my friend, they were on a fancy yacht in L.A., or off of L.A., wherever they have yachts up there. And so she was getting off the boat and she slipped and broke her leg. So she had to have her leg put in a big cast, and so she's recovering, lying on a couch and looking out of a big picture window in the backyard, and there's a swimming pool. So she started getting depressed, lying there by herself, and she's kind of like a very energetic and extroverted type person, so that was not working so well for her. So she's lying there every day, and she looks out the window at the back, at the pool, and the yard, So one day she's looking out the window, and suddenly she sees this somewhat elderly naked man running across the lawn. Well, that kind of woke her up, right? I mean, he just flew across the lawn and disappeared. So she said, what the hell is this, right? And so she looked, well, suddenly he came from the other direction, and from stark naked, flew right back there, and it was this guy, 70 years old. She was no longer depressed. And as far as I know, that knocked her out of it. That's someone who does not avoid intimacy. And that's someone who was so endlessly meeting life moment to moment, always meeting it, always interested in it. There's a story about Zen students that I used to never understand it. And so like when you sit for like this, if they call it a sesshin in the Zen temple, but you sit at the end of this and then you have to have an interview with your teacher. Well, that's scary. I mean, those guys can scare the life out of you, because you have a koan that you're working on or whatever, and it's always wrong, right? So then they say no or whatever. They don't smile that much. So, in Zen, when the bell rings, people fly to get to the top of the line for the interview. You don't linger back and say, oh shit. Everyone rushes to be the first person to get in line. That's a marvelous metaphor for not avoiding intimacy, isn't it? You rush to say, how can I, to meet whatever it is you want to be. And he always did that in his life. It was just quite amazing. He always rushed. He didn't linger back and say, well, let me just see, let me see how things are going to work out before I hit the trail. He was first in line. And so as I look at, as I said, as I look at my own strategies and the speed, the speed, that's the speed in our head, the monkey mind, that actually slows us down from rushing to be there, rushing to meet life, right? Because it's a sort of a little bit of a separation, between us and whatever the thing is. So you all have heard me say this, but again, in terms of reading and studying, as I've been doing for many, well, for years, but for months, but I'm so fascinated at the absence of intimacy between the teacher and the student in Tibetan and in Zen. I mean, it was scary. They had to. They rushed to the front of the line, but with this openness and this knowledge, that they were coming to near the flame. They were coming near the flame that could burn them, burn the ego, burn the false self. And so, as you read it, you read these stories over and over and over and over. The more the more I read, the more I started to say, "Oh my God, that is true intimacy. That's what it really is. You don't step back. You step forward. Here am I. And then I thought, and I think with a lot of sadness, I mean that for myself, we just aren't set up for that, are we? Are we? Are we set up for that, for that rushing to the front of the line? Or, to some extent, we've all been so damaged by cults, charlatans, false teachers, false parents. We've become so careful and so cautious in our lives. Is there anyone who would say that's kind of true? We've become careful and cautious in our lives. So as I was thinking about it, and I'm finished now, but I so want to say his name because he has a wonderful first name. But I'm not going to. But he was fearless. He was fearless. And then I started to say, okay, so if I'm going to say what are the qualities of intimacy, of not avoiding intimacy, I said, okay, there's one. Fearless. A willingness to step into the fire with someone. A willingness to step into the fire. Fearless. That, I think, is a one. And if there are those in this room who have children. There are those in this room have dogs. No, that was a joke. Or a cat. So I think it crosses the board. I mean, I know of parents, and I say this with a lot of sadness in my heart. I know a number of parents who are afraid of hurting their children. And so they have always stepped back. Right? They've always stepped back from that fire. And so of being in it with the child. And I'm speaking specifically of my own family, by the way. But I've watched it. The avoidance of intimacy is universal and pervasive. If it's in me, and it has been in me all of my life, the odds are it's in a few of you as well. And not so easy to discover. Right? It's disguised in a myriad of ways. Really. If someone is looking, they can see it. But unfortunately, how many people are looking? I mean, how many people are interested in looking? So I've read this 2 or 3 years ago, and I couldn't find it, but I did find it. So this is a poem written by a very famous person named Anonymous. I love poems by Anonymous. Really. So anyway, and this was it's more. Well, you'll get why I'm reading it. But I love this so much. I thought about this when he passed away, but it's not really. It's maybe more for a mother than for a son. And the title of it is When I Die. So the poem is, when I die, if you need to weep, cry for your brothers or sister, walk in the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words and sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not on your mind. Oh, my Lord. Let me live in your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. It's true. It's true. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. So it seems to me like that comes pretty close to intimacy, what intimacy is. When all that's left is love, give me away. So that was my Dharma talk on intimacy. And I guess I wanted to share with you all that really that's kind of like my 2016 resolution. That's really what I'm sort of interested in, is trying to remember of the avoidance of intimacy as I just almost, veered towards it on the elevator coming over here. I have done 2 or 3 different little things in the past week that are not avoidance of intimacy, where I wanted to make steps towards being intimate, sharing, being honest with other people. And so I would like to invite you to just consider that as, if you have your own resolution, maybe yours is as good as mine or better. But if you don't have one, if you're running around looking for one, this would be a pretty good one.